All right, that's exactly it right there. Joe Hunk on the line, talking Auburn football, the Fallout 740 Jocks game day on Jocks 94.5 in Birmingham, Alabama. So National Signing Day is less than 2 weeks away. Of course, the National Signing Day focus has certainly shifted the last 2 years to December. Roughly 85% of the guys that eventually sign in Power 5 football have already signed, but there's still some key recruits out there for the pursuit. Right now, Auburn's at number 6 in the SEC, number 12 in the country in the 247 composite rankings. Who's on the fence? Who are the targets? Who's going to make this an even better class?
Well, there's some things that Auburn needs to really improve on. And, when you look at the great programs, like with Auburn, always the thought has been, and you talked about it, we're in a weird state. You look about, 3 hours to our east, and you have Athens, and you have Georgia, and you now have this program that just played for a national championship. You look 2 hours, basically northwest, and you have Tuscaloosa. You go about 4 hours to the west, you have LSU. So you have these three major programs in your area, and you have an offense that's different than all of them. But the one thing that you need to do is you need to see how they recruit and how they recruit based on their need. And where Auburn really struggled, and that goes back to last season, is offensive line. And, a lot of people look at how Jarrett Stidham was this past season to the season before that, when people thought he might be a first-round draft pick, and the offensive line broke down. See, what a lot of people don't understand is that Auburn didn't have very much depth at the offensive line position last year. And you had a lot of players that were playing on that offensive line that were injured, and they continued to go out and play because they didn't have anybody behind them that could step up, that was showing out in practice, that could prove that they deserved to be on the field. And so you want to look at that. With Auburn, unfortunately, they still only have 2 offensive linemen signed. They need to go get more offensive linemen. They need depth at this offensive line position, because that's the main position where it's ugly. I mean, Cole Kublik talks about it all the time. You need a good offensive line. If you look at how Alabama recruits, if you look how Georgia and LSU recruit, you talk about the 4 and 5 stars, they always have 1, maybe 2 offensive linemen that's really high up and highly ranked. Auburn doesn't do that. And that's where I need to see Auburn improving, is getting these high 5 and 4 star offensive linemen. And that's where they still knew they have some room. They have about, I think, 6 or 7 positions that they could do. They need to add some offensive linemen into this class, because right now that's still going to be their issue going into 2019. They have a very veteran offensive line, but if they don't add recruits there, if one of these guys gets injured, which we saw a lot of that last year, you're once again potentially having another one of your recruits in Bo Nix playing behind a suspect offensive line, and that's not going to be good.
All right, we're talking Auburn football, folks. So we've got Joe Hunk on the line from the Fallout 740. You can also catch him on Jocks Game Day on Jocks 94.5 in Birmingham. This transfer portal, my goodness, it's tearing up some teams. And when I say that, I'm looking at Happy Valley. I'm looking at Blacksburg, Virginia, where they've lost their starting quarterback, best running back, and best wide receiver. Maybe the attrition hasn't been so bad at Auburn, but the interesting thing here is something that we talked about before we started to record, and your mention of Gus Malzahn's all-consuming interest in the next possible quarterback find, and that's what it is with this transfer portal.
Yeah, the portal for Auburn has not been something that is going to be a big deal. Like, they have a player. When you look at this transfer portal and the way that these athletic departments look at it, if you're hitting that refresh button to see who's put their name in the portal, when a player from Auburn popped up, it was like, this guy hadn't really played that much. No big deal whatsoever. Not going to worry about him. But then you look at the transfer portal and you start hearing what you talked about. Virginia Tech, Josh Jackson's going in. Even Jalen Hurts put his name into the transfer portal. You can look at the quarterback from Ohio State that put his name in. Justin Fields that did the transfer portal as well. These are all big names. The thing is, when it comes to Malzahn, this is also kind of, it's really kind of hard to judge how Auburn football is going to be from a year-to-year basis, because the quarterback development has just never been there. And when you look at Malzahn, his best seasons, we've both mentioned them. 2010, Cam Newton. 2013, Nick Marshall. Both JUCO transfers. Both guys that came into the system. Now, Nick Marshall, he improved from 13 to 14 a little bit. His passing was better, but he's playing Canadian football right now as a secondary player. Obviously, Cam Newton is the jewel of all of this, but Malzahn's never been able to develop quarterbacks. And so the problem is you continue to look through the line of players that have come to Auburn. These we joke about the Mr. Football here in Alabama is Clint Mosley. People forget about him. He was a Mr. Football for the state of Alabama. Pretty sure he's selling insurance right now. Like, you look at Jeremy Johnson. I mean, this guy was like going to be the next football god from the state of Alabama in Auburn. He was the Mr. Football. He goes in. We still don't know what happened to him. I mean, we really just don't. Between the idea of him never being the true quarterback that many thought that he was going to be, going into the idea of they did some sort of VR, workout with him, and the VR workout totally messed his brain up and all this other stuff. I mean, there's always been these things that have been talked about. And now you have Bo Nix. Bo Nix is a Mr. Football. Now, I didn't forget about Kerryon Johnson or Asa Martin, but those guys, Kerryon's been in the NFL, but Asa Martin, he now used the transfer portal and he went to Miami. Bo Nix is coming in, and there's this thought that he is going to be the starter against Oregon. We don't really know that much about Joey Gatewood as far as if he's got the playbook down. There was conversation throughout the year that, look, this guy really doesn't want to study. He was a freshman, man. I mean, he was living that freshman life. So, he got a little bit better throughout the year. Malik Willis is very much like he's more like a Nick Marshall. He's got the speed, but I think he's like one hit away from being out for a football season because he's that small. With all those quarterbacks being talked about, Malzahn loves the transfer portal because he thinks he can bring in another one of these transfers. There was talk of potentially Jalen Hurts going to Auburn. Like, we had a conversation for 2 days on the Fallout. If you're an Alabama fan, which one would you rather have? Nick Saban step down after National Signing Day, or Jalen Hurts win a national championship as Auburn's quarterback next season? And literally it was like 50-50. Alabama fans couldn't figure out which one they wanted. You had Josh Jackson that was rumored as Auburn has some interest in him. Every single time a transfer portal quarterback goes in, Tyree Jackson, or the quarterback from Buffalo that came in that played in the Senior Bowl the other night, he was talked about as well potentially at Auburn. Malzahn's like a Kardashian NBA player, man. Like, if there's somebody out there that's a dual threat quarterback, he's going to try to talk to him. And there's still this thought that maybe there's going to be a dual threat quarterback that's going to come in, and Auburn's going to once again go through this same thing they go through every year. Jarrett Stidham, transfer quarterback, not a JUCO, but a transfer quarterback. Malzahn loves them. We still have some days until National Signing Day. Is a transfer quarterback going to be a part of this signing class, even though you once again have Mr. Football, Bo Nix, who's a legacy player that's going to be coming in, and he seems to be this guy that with the right coaching could be an NFL quarterback. The joke is, Bo Nix, congratulations, man. Your career's over because you just got Mr. Football, and we all know that Mr. Footballs at Auburn don't really work out.
Joe, I think you could have given me like an hour to come up with a sentence to tie Gus Malzahn and the Kardashians together, and I wouldn't have been able to do it. I would have been lost on that one, but you made it happen.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, it's the truth, man. If there's one out there, he's sliding into the DMs. I mean, he is.
All right. He is Joe Hunk. You can catch him on the Fallout 740. Also, Jocks Game Day on Jocks 94.5 there in Birmingham, Alabama. Joe, it was a great discussion. We appreciate the insight and the information. You're always welcome. We appreciate you stopping by.
Hey, man, I always appreciate it. I love it. You allowed me to use my video game stream equipment for something other than actually playing a video game stream. So, I mean, that's what we do around here, man. I mean, once the season wraps up, we're in the middle of a college football video game stream right now. In fact, we had Auburn and Oklahoma this past week playing our video game stream. So, I mean, hey, we do all we can to keep it college football all year.
So who was able to win that one?
I played as Oklahoma, and Kyler Murray kind of ran all over Auburn.
Okay.
I really hate that because I am an Auburn fan. But another guy here at our studio, he got the first pick. He chose Auburn. So somehow Oklahoma was still around the number 6-7 pick. I picked them up, and Kyler Murray rushed for like 150 yards, threw for about 300 more, and we won. So I think if he would have been able to do that in the Orange Bowl, the national championship game might have been a little different.
Yeah, we've seen that before. Unfortunately for the Sooners, we didn't see it until late in the first half, and they were just way too far behind.
Yeah.
All right, Joe, we appreciate you stopping by, man.
Hey, man, I appreciate it anytime.